Imagine a world where a single shift in your words could turn mere tolerance into deep respect. What if the difference between being ignored and being cherished was simply the way you spoke, the energy you brought into the room? It's not about playing games or manipulating anyone, it's about speaking the truth with clarity, strength, and presence. Picture this. Men won't just notice you, they'll admire you, respect you, and elevate their actions to meet you at your level. What if I told you that the difference between being tolerated and being treasured could come down to just a few words? A slight shift in tone, a conscious choice of language, a moment of genuine presence. This isn't about manipulation or playing game sits, about speaking the truth with clarity and strength. When you speak like this, men won't just notice you, they'll respect you, honor you, and rise to meet you. Not because you begged for a crown, but because you spoke like a queen long before anyone handed you one. When we say that respect commands respect, we are touching on something fundamental about how humans, especially men, perceive others and respond to them. Respect isn't merely something you ask for or demand, it's something that's demonstrated almost unconsciously in the way you carry yourself, the tone in your voice, and the words you choose. When a woman speaks with clarity, conviction, and self-respect, it signals to a man that she knows her worth, and because she knows it, she deserves to be treated with kindness and consideration. This is not about arrogance, nor is it about dominating a conversation or relationship. It's about having a subtle, unwavering presence, a way of communicating that says, I am grounded in who I am. Men, particularly those who operate from a place of structure and responsibility, respond deeply to signals of confidence. They aren't drawn to neediness or ambiguity, they're drawn to certainty, even if they don't immediately understand it. When a woman speaks from a place of self-possession, without apology for her boundaries or desires, she sets a tone. That tone acts like gravity, anchors the interaction. It calls the man upward, inviting him to meet her at her level, not through pressure or performance, but through genuine respect. Now, what does this look like in practice? It means you don't diminish your opinions to make someone feel comfortable. You don't sugarcoat your values or preferences to avoid rejection. You don't shrink yourself just to fit into someone else's idea of what's acceptable. Instead, you speak your truth plainly, without hostility, but also without hesitation. And when someone crosses a line, you address it directly, not with cruelty or drama, but with the firmness of someone who knows she doesn't need to beg for what she deserves. There's an energetic transaction happening in every conversation. When a woman is uncertain, overly accommodating, or hesitant in her communication, it sends a signal to the other person. Building upon the idea of setting boundaries and creating respect, let's explore how the way you speak and present yourself establishes the foundation for how you are treated. When you leave room for uncertainty in how you expect to be treated, especially with a man, it sends a signal that there may be wiggle room. While he may not be doing this consciously, men often test boundaries. It's not out of malice, but simply part of the dance in social and romantic dynamics. The way you speak can be the first boundary. A soft maybe, a nervous laugh when a line is crossed. These are invitations to keep testing, to see if you really mean what you say. But when you speak with self-respect, it cuts through all the noise. It sends a clear message. This is who I am. This is what I expect, and I will not collapse under pressure. This kind of communication has weight, and weight is inherently attractive. It doesn't mean you have to be loud, cold, or overly masculine in your energy. It simply means that you treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. In every interaction, you set the standard. Because men are often drawn to structure, they will rise or fall based on the structure you provide with your presence and your words. The words you choose don't have to be complex. In fact, simplicity often signals strength. Phrases like, I'm not comfortable with that, I need some space to think, or that doesn't work for me, are not demands, they are declarations. They don't push someone away. They merely state where the line is. And the right man who respects you will adjust, not because he's afraid, but because he understands. A woman who respects herself cannot be treated casually. She must be approached with intention. The way you speak, the energy behind your words, and the steadiness in your tone is the first act of self-respect. And this act invites others, especially men, to respond in kind, not out of fear or obligation, but out of recognition. When respect is your default, it becomes your mirror. Affirming a man's strength is not manipulation, it's insight. It taps into a deep psychological truth. Men, at their core, are wired to respond to challenge, responsibility, and recognition. This doesn't mean that all men are looking for praise or that they crumble without it, but being seen as capable, competent, and strong gives them something to live up to. It awakens their sense of purpose. It's not about stroking their ego, it's about activating their potential. And the way you speak to a man can either bring that strength to the surface or suppress it. When a woman says something as simple as, "I believe in you," or "I know you can handle this," she isn't just being supportive. She's setting a tone that reshapes the interaction. She's saying, "I see the best in you, and I expect you to rise to it." That kind of affirmation calls a man into his higher self. It invites action over avoidance, courage over complacency. Men may often act stoic, withdrawn, or unaffected, but beneath the surface, they are sensitive to how they are perceived. Building on the idea of how men respond to respect and affirmation, let's now explore the subtle yet powerful impact that recognition can have on their strength and leadership. Think about what happens when the opposite occurs. When a woman constantly criticizes, points out flaws, or makes sarcastic jab 7 in jest, she slowly chips away at the very thing she hopes to cultivate in a man: his strength, his leadership, his initiative. Because when a man is constantly made to feel inadequate, he doesn't just shrink away. He either withdraws into himself or becomes defensive in it because he's weak, but because he no longer feels there's a role for him to step into. If everything he does is wrong, if his intentions are always misread, if nothing he does is ever good enough, then what's the point in trying? Why continue if there is no appreciation for his efforts? However, when a woman affirms his strength not blindly, not artificially, but with sincerity, it triggers something essential within him. It tells him, "You're not just wanted here, you're needed." And when a man feels needed, when he feels that he brings something valuable to the table, his entire posture shifts. He becomes more protective, more generous, more intentional, not because he's being controlled, but because he's been called into service. For many men, service is where they often find their identity. But the key here is authenticity. A woman should never force herself to affirm something she doesn't truly believe. But she must learn to recognize the difference between a man who's failing because he doesn't care and one who's faltering because he doesn't feel seen. The latter often just needs to hear that someone notices the effort behind the silence, that his discipline, his sacrifices, his restraint are not invisible. This can be subtle. Saying something as simple as, "I noticed how you handled that, it was impressive," or "You really held it together when that situation got tense," does more than compliment, it recognizes. And recognition is something entirely different from flattery. Recognition is grounded in truth, while flattery is shallow. Recognition is transformative. One builds dependence, the other builds dignity. Men don't always express themselves in the language of emotion. Many show their feelings through action, through tangible results. And when you affirm the strength behind those actions, the intention, the burden, the restraint, you're speaking in a way that truly reaches them. You're not just telling them they're good enough. You're telling them they are seen. You're telling them their strength matters, that it has impact. But this isn't about inflating egos or becoming submissive. It's about aligning with reality. Strong men become even stronger in the presence of a woman who sees them clearly, who speaks not to the boy who seeks approval, but to the man who's ready to lead. When she does this, her words don't just influence, they inspire, and that inspiration becomes the foundation of loyalty, effort, and devotion. Building on the idea of recognizing a man's strength through affirmation, let's now dive into the importance of setting boundaries and the clarity they provide in relationships. There's a common misconception that setting boundaries is an act of aggression or a sign of distrust. However, in truth, boundaries are not about building walls around yourself. They are about defining the space in which respect can flourish. They're an invitation to connect in a way that is healthy, honest, and sustainable. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not about control. Instead, they're about clarity. And clarity is what prevents chaos in relationships. When a woman knows where she stands and can articulate what she will and will not accept, she is not closing herself off from love. On the contrary, she is protecting the very conditions in which love can grow. When you say no with kindness, calmness, and conviction, you're not being difficult. You're being clear. And clarity is what creates trust. A man may not always agree with your boundary, but if he's a man of integrity, he will respect it. He may test it not out of malice, but out of curiosity. He wants to know if your words are aligned with your actions. When you are consistent and honor your own limits, you teach him how to treat you. You do this not with threats or withdrawal, but with self-possession. You calmly say, "This is what I need to feel safe. This is how I engage. This is what doesn't work for me." And then you follow through. Some people avoid setting boundaries because they fear rejection. They worry that saying no will make them less desirable, less agreeable, less lovable. But the opposite is true. Boundaries signal self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. It shows that you're not waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. And when a man senses that, it shifts the dynamic. You're no longer asking him to validate you. Instead, you're inviting him to earn a place beside you, not by jumping through hoops, but by respecting your space and your standards. Men do not fear boundaries when they're communicated with grace. In fact, many men are drawn to women who know themselves well enough to set those boundaries clearly. It gives him structure. It gives him direction. A vague or passive communication style, on the other hand, creates uncertainty. It makes him guess, and when he's guessing, he's either withdrawing to avoid making mistakes or overcompensating in ways that don't align with your true desires. But when you say what you mean, when you hold your line, and when you stop over-explaining and start trusting that your no is enough, it becomes easier for him to show up in the way you need. And here's where it gets powerful. Boundaries don't just protect you, they elevate the relationship. They draw out emotional maturity. They filter out those who are not ready to engage at your level. They refine the connection. You are no longer in relationships where your needs are seen as inconveniences. Continuing from the idea that boundaries are essential for healthy, respectful relationships, let's dive deeper into how clear communication and self-respect play a crucial role in maintaining those boundaries. You are in relationships where your needs are respected as part of your identity. A man can't read your mind, nor should he have to. If you're uncomfortable, you speak up. If you're hurt, you clarify. If something crosses a line, you point it out not with aggression or resentment, but with clarity and calmness. This isn't about controlling someone else's behavior. It's about owning your voice. When you do this, you give the man in your life a chance to respond like a man, not like a child avoiding punishment, but like a partner rising to meet you in your truth. The beauty of this dynamic is that boundaries don't require force or drama. They require consistency. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to mean what you say. A soft no with conviction speaks louder than a loud yes set out of fear. A quiet but firm expression of your needs is far more powerful than a dozen pleas for understanding. When your words match your energy, when your tone matches your truth, a man knows that he's dealing with someone who cannot be pushed, only partnered with. This kind of communication carries weight. It is direct, it is clear, and it respects both your needs and his ability to rise to the occasion. Honoring the masculine without submitting to it is an art form rooted in balance. It's about acknowledging the unique strengths men bring to a relationship, qualities like decisiveness, protectiveness, and action-oriented thinking without diminishing your own power in the process. It's not about surrendering authority or becoming passive. It's about creating space for polarity, the natural tension between masculine and feminine energies, where both can operate at their fullest without competing or collapsing into each other. There's a misconception in many modern dynamics that recognizing masculine traits somehow betrays the concept of equality. But equality doesn't mean sameness. Masculine and feminine energies are not in opposition, they are complementary. When a woman speaks in a way that affirms a man's role as a leader, protector, or initiator, it doesn't mean she lacks those qualities herself. It simply means she's choosing not to dominate the same space. She's inviting him to stand in his role while she fully occupies hers. She's not stepping back. She's stepping aside to let the dance unfold in rhythm. That might sound subtle, but the impact it has on the relationship is profound. When a woman says, "I appreciate the way you handled that," or "I feel safer knowing you're thinking things through," she's not giving up her intelligence or agency. She's letting the man know that his strength has value, that she notices his effort, and that she is secure enough in herself to let him take the lead where appropriate, while still reserving the right to speak, challenge, or redirect when needed. There is strength in this kind of grace. It does not come from a place of weakness, rather it comes from a place of deep self-assurance and understanding. It's the kind of strength that fosters trust, respect, and a sense of mutual growth in the relationship. Continuing from the idea of respecting and balancing masculine and feminine energies in relationships, let's explore how true strength and confidence manifest in communication. True strength comes from deep confidence. A woman who feels the need to dominate every decision, correct every move, or constantly prove her independence is not operating from a place of strength. She's operating from fear of being vulnerable, fear of being let down. But when a woman is grounded in her own value, she doesn't fear collaboration, and she's not afraid to trust. She doesn't feel intimidated by a man's presence or his power because her own power is intact. And from this place of inner assurance, she can say, "I see your leadership, and I support it, but I'm not blind. I'm still watching, still thinking, and I will speak when I need to." This kind of energy keeps both parties engaged and growing. It doesn't flatten the dynamic into something stale or combative. It preserves the natural polarity where attraction thrives. Men don't feel empowered when they are constantly second-guessed or micromanaged. They feel emasculated. But when their initiative is acknowledged, when their instincts are respected, they rise. They lead better. They take ownership not to dominate, but to serve. A good man doesn't want control. He wants trust. He wants to know that his woman sees the fire in him and believes he can wield it responsibly. However, that trust is not blind. It is earned, and it is conditional on mutual respect. If a man abuses the space given to him, then the dynamic must shift. A strong woman knows when to let go and when to step in. She is both soft and steel receptive, but not reactive. She's not interested in power games. She's interested in alignment. She honors his masculine energy not because she has to, but because she chooses to. Because she knows that doing so doesn't lessen her, it amplifies the connection. It allows both people to be more fully themselves. And in that space, real intimacy is built not through control, but through trust, mutual recognition, and a shared commitment to leading and following when the moment calls for each. Speaking from vision instead of victimhood is one of the most transformative shifts a person can make in communication, especially in a romantic relationship. It's the difference between drawing someone in with clarity and purpose versus pushing them away with blame and resentment. When a woman communicates her needs from a place of vision, she becomes a guide, not a critic. She paints a picture of the relationship she wants to build, instead of reciting a list of things that aren't working. This shift in tone changes everything, not just how a man hears her, but how he feels about his role in her life. Men respond to purpose. Building on the previous discussion about the power of vision in communication, let's now explore how this approach shapes not only the connection between partners, but also fosters mutual growth. Men are wired to pursue, solve, and contribute. When a woman speaks from a place of vision, she gives a man something to work toward. She inspires direction. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," she might say, "I feel most connected to you when I can tell you're really tuned in. I'd love more of that." True strength comes from deep confidence. A woman who feels the need to dominate every decision, correct every move, or constantly prove her independence is not operating from a place of strength. She's operating from fear of being vulnerable, fear of being let down. But when a woman is grounded in her own value, she doesn't fear collaboration, and she's not afraid to trust. She doesn't feel intimidated by a man's presence or his power because her own power is intact. And from this place of inner assurance, she can say, "I see your leadership, and I support it, but I'm not blind. I'm still watching, still thinking, and I will speak when I need to." This kind of energy keeps both parties engaged and growing. It doesn't flatten the dynamic into something stale or combative. It preserves the natural polarity where attraction thrives. Men don't feel empowered when they are constantly second-guessed or micromanaged. They feel emasculated. But when their initiative is acknowledged, when their instincts are respected, they rise. They lead better. They take ownership not to dominate, but to serve. A good man doesn't want control. He wants trust. He wants to know that his woman sees the fire in him and believes he can wield it responsibly. However, that trust is not blind. It is earned, and it is conditional on mutual respect. If a man abuses the space given to him, then the dynamic must shift. A strong woman knows when to let go and when to step in. She is both soft and steel receptive, but not reactive. She's not interested in power games. She's interested in alignment. She honors his masculine energy not because she has to, but because she chooses to. Because she knows that doing so doesn't lessen her, it amplifies the connection. It allows both people to be more fully themselves. And in that space, real intimacy is built not through control, but through trust, mutual recognition, and a shared commitment to leading and following when the moment calls for each. Speaking from vision instead of victimhood is one of the most transformative shifts a person can make in communication, especially in a romantic relationship. It's the difference between drawing someone in with clarity and purpose versus pushing them away with blame and resentment. When a woman communicates her needs from a place of vision, she becomes a guide, not a critic. She paints a picture of the relationship she wants to build, instead of reciting a list of things that aren't working. This shift in tone changes everything. Not just how a man hears her, but how he feels about his role in her life. Men respond to purpose. Building on the previous discussion about the power of vision in communication, let's now explore how this approach shapes not only the connection between partners, but also fosters mutual growth. Men are wired to pursue, solve, and contribute. When a woman speaks from a place of vision, she gives a man something to work toward. She inspires direction. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," she might say, "I feel most connected to you when I can tell you're really tuned in. I'd love more of that." There is something undeniably powerful about softness when it is rooted in strength. This isn't the kind of softness that submits out of fear or shrinks to keep the peace. It's the kind that comes from a deep well of self-assurance. When a woman speaks from this place gentle in tone but firm in purpose, she creates an energy that is both disarming and magnetic. Men are often taught to operate in a world of pressure, competition, and constant assertion. So when they encounter softness that is not weakness but wisdom, it captures their attention. It doesn't challenge their masculinity, it invites it to rise. Many people mistake strength for hardness. They believe that being respected means being brash, loud, or combative. But those who are truly powerful don't need to raise their voice to command presence. Their words carry weight because they know who they are. When a woman is grounded in herself, she can speak softly and still be heard clearly. Her calmness is not passivity, it's control. She doesn't need to prove her point through volume or argument. Her strength lies in her stability. That steadiness allows her to lead without dominating, to influence without demanding. Softness, in this context, is a kind of emotional generosity. It's the ability to speak with compassion, even when addressing conflict. It's choosing connection over control. When a man hears a woman express her boundaries or needs with calmness and warmth, he doesn't feel threatened. He feels respected. And respect is often what opens the door to a deeper emotional response in men. They want to be strong for someone who doesn't try to compete with them, but instead compliments them. A woman's softness gives a man permission to be both strong and vulnerable at the same time. It creates a dynamic where he doesn't feel like he has to armor up just to be in her presence. That dynamic matters because men are often conditioned to hide emotion, to suppress sensitivity, and to constantly perform. In the presence of a woman who is both soft and strong, a man finds space to relax into himself. He doesn't have to posture. He doesn't have to play games. He can lead, protect, and initiate not because he's proving something, but because he's choosing to. Her softness does not control him. It awakens him. It makes him want to step up not out of obligation, but out of desire. Building upon the idea of speaking from vision and maintaining balance, let's explore how a woman's approach to communication shapes her presence and impact in relationships. This way of speaking firm yet gentle, confident yet kind is not always easy. It requires self-awareness and emotional discipline. It means not reacting impulsively when you feel disrespected, but choosing to respond with clarity and calm. It means staying centered in your worth so that you don't have to use anger to assert it. That kind of restraint, that level of poise, is rare. And it stands out. It makes a woman unforgettable, not because she's loud or forceful, but because she is unmistakably centered in herself. This does not mean tolerating mistreatment or sugarcoating the truth. Softness isn't about being agreeable at all costs. It's about learning how to deliver truth in a way that can be heard, not resisted. It's about staying connected to your heart while still honoring your boundaries. A soft but strong voice says, "I see you, I care, and I still stand firm." That balance draws men in it to overpower them, but to inspire them. The men who are ready for depth, responsibility, and something lasting don't need to be barked at to change. They respond to tone, to trust, to presence. And when a woman masters the art of speaking with both grace and conviction, she becomes someone a man respects, protects, and listens to, no because she demanded it, but because she embodied it. When a woman speaks with clarity, strength, and grace, when she affirms without appeasing, sets boundaries without aggression, honors the masculine without surrendering her own power, communicates from vision rather than victimhood, and delivers truth with softness rooted in confidence, she doesn't just capture attention, she commands deep respect. She becomes a mirror through which a man sees the best version of himself and is moved to rise to it, not out of obligation, but from a place of purpose. In that space, where strength meets softness, where respect flows both ways, and where communication is grounded in truth rather than tactics, she is not just treated like a queen, she becomes one. Not because she demanded a throne, but because she built one within herself and invited only those strong enough to sit beside her. As we come to the end of this powerful journey of self-awareness, respect, and emotional maturity, it's clear that the way we communicate, set boundaries, and embrace our strength shapes not only our relationships, but the very way we move through the world. When we speak with clarity, conviction, and grace, we don't just command respect, we inspire it. We become the architects of our own worth and create the space for real, meaningful connections to thrive. If you found this video insightful, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you the most? How do you practice speaking your truth with clarity and confidence? Share your experiences and reflections in the comments below. I'd love to continue this conversation with you. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from our channel. Let's continue to grow, learn, and inspire each other. Thanks for watching, and remember, your voice matters. Speak your truth, honor your boundaries, and let your strength shine. Until next time, stay empowered and stay true to yourself.